Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Inside the Mind, a podcast for athletes. Today I wanted to talk about some breaking news in the world of sports that broke about 15 hours ago. Andrew Luck, quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, announced his retirement pretty suddenly. He's only 29 years old. And, this was a huge shock to not only the football world, but the sports world in general. Andrew Luck, perennial Pro Bowl quarterback, future Hall of Famer, at least on the path of being a Hall of Fame quarterback. For him to announce this retirement just 2 weeks before the season started was just a huge shock to everybody. For those of you that don't know too much about Andrew Luck, he was drafted number 1 overall by the Indianapolis Colts back in 2012. Coming out of college, he was probably not only one of the top 3 quarterback prospects of all time, but he was one of the top 3 football prospects of all time. He played 6 seasons with the Colts. I think he made the Pro Bowl 4 times, dealt with a huge list of injuries. And at the age of 29, where other quarterbacks such as Tom Brady, who's about 42, I think. Breeze is in his 40s, if I'm not mistaken. Rodgers is 35 or 36. In this kind of day and age where quarterbacks are playing, longer and longer and having longer careers. For a guy like Andrew Luck, who's in the prime of his career, one of the most elite quarterbacks in the league, for him to kind of call it quits at this time of his career it was just a huge shock. Of course, Andrew Luck isn't the first NFL athlete to call it quits in the midst of such a successful career. Barry Sanders back in the 90s, a running back for the Lions, who's now in the Hall of Fame, called it quits early. Calvin Johnson, most recently, wide receiver for the Lions, retired, I think, at the age of 30 or 31. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. And then Patrick Willis, former linebacker of the 49ers, also announced his retirement, who is also a perennial Pro Bowler and probably has another decent shot of getting to the Hall of Fame as well. So this isn't something new for the NFL to deal with, but I think because it hasn't happened too often that it's still a shock to people when it does. But I think that we're going to get to a day and age one time that athletes retiring early isn't going to be a shock. Last night in this press conference, Andrew Luck talked more so about the mental fatigue that he went through. I think he's a pretty tough guy physically. Given the level of injuries that he's dealt with, to give you kind of an insight into what injuries he's dealt with. He's had a torn cartilage in 2 ribs. He's had a partially torn abdomen. He's had a lacerated kidney. He's had at least 1 concussion. Of course, now, the past couple of years, the NFL has really cracked down on concussions. They have the concussion protocol. But back when Andrew Luck first came into the league, I would say that, the concussion protocol wasn't as, stringent as it is right now. So he's probably had a couple concussions in the NFL, or at least, concussion-like symptoms that have gone undiagnosed. He's also had a torn labrum in his throwing shoulder, and then since about April or May, so the past 3-4 months, he's been dealing with a calf and ankle issue. These are just his professional injuries that he's taken in the NFL. I'm sure he's taken a lot more injuries or body shots or whatever in the college game, in the high school game, playing JV, Pee-wee football. I'm sure that his whole life he's just dealt with injury and pain and rehab, and he kind of spoke to that a bit last night as well. He said it wasn't an easy decision to walk away from football, but the past 4 or so years, he's been just having a constant non-ending cycle of injury, pain, and rehab. Injury, pain, and rehab. And, he described it as unceasing and unrelenting. And, I can really empathize with the guy. I think any of the injuries that I listed out through his NFL career, I think if I had, any one of those injuries, I would have probably questioned myself, continuing an NFL career. For him to go through, at least these 5 or 6 injuries that I mentioned, and then still, give his all to his teammates over the last 6 years, I think that really just kind of shows the type of teammate and person that Andrew Luck is. I think that, a lot of people on Twitter and social media have attacked Andrew Luck the past 20 hours or so, 24 hours, about, his mental toughness, saying, how can you quit? you're a quitter, you're walking away from, life must be so hard as you have millions of dollars going to your mansion. But I think, I think people are looking at this the wrong way. I think that the true definition of Andrew Luck, his mental toughness, is being able to walk away from the game that he's devoted his whole life to, that he's made his career off of. I think that's the true definition of mental toughness. I think that if Andrew Luck was to stay and play football when he wasn't happy, just for, just to appease others, just kind of for those external factors, I think that would be the opposite of mental toughness. I think that's kind of being really mentally weak doing that. I think when you're able to do something for, more internal reasons, because you like it, because you enjoy it, because it makes you happy, those I think are the true reasons to do something, to make sure that you're not going to burn out eventually. When you're doing something just, for appeasing others or for external factors, then that's not really, how you get the most out of something. That's not how you are able to sustain a long career doing something. And I'm not going to deny that Andrew Luck at one point in his life played football because he was happy. Played football because it was something that he enjoyed. Played football because, it's what he actually wanted to do. But we can't deny the fact that, things change in life. There's things that happened to Andrew Luck that he couldn't control, such as, his injuries that really, changed his perspective on the game and his perspective on life. And, if Andrew Luck's able to stand up in the middle of his career, with all heaps of expectations on him, from fans, from teammates, from Colts staff members, to, be the elite quarterback that he can be. And if, deep down inside him, he's just doesn't make him happy to do that, I think that we can't really hold that against him. And I think we need to applaud him for that, for showing us, what it truly means to be happy, not only as an athlete, but a person, what it truly means to be mentally tough and able to kind of go against what everybody is throwing down on you, go against what all the expectations that are coming down on you, and being able kind of to almost, pave your own path and do what makes you happy. I don't think this is going to be, in 10, 15 years, I think when more and more athletes, when they retire in the midst of their careers, I don't think it's going to be as much as a shock. I think it's a shock now with Andrew Luck because it hasn't happened as much in the past in the NFL. I know I named off three most prominent guys. There's probably about 10 or 15 other, notable NFL players that have retired in the midst of career. But, as the world evolves and, there's more and more opportunities to do things and people don't just rely on football or sports as a livelihood, I think that we're going to see more and more people kind of realize that, if their heart's not set into football, they don't need to stay in it, or any sport for that matter. If their heart's not in it at any particular point in time, they don't need to stay in it. That, what really matters to them should just be their own happiness. And there's plenty of other opportunities for Andrew Luck to, fulfill his passion for things, to, to keep his life busy, to stay happy, to make money. So, I think we just kind of have to applaud Andrew Luck, even though it's hard, especially for Colts fans. But, try not to treat him kind of as a commodity or as, a football player, but treat him more as a human being. And I'm sure if anybody's son or daughter was in Andrew Luck's position, or anybody's family member was in his position, they'd want them to do the same thing. So don't kind of look at Andrew Luck in this situation in a different viewpoint just because, you depend on him for, the Colts, or, you draft him on your fantasy football team. Try to think of it of what would your perception of the situation be if this was your kid or your family member that was going through what Andrew Luck was going through, which is, kind of some mental health issues. I think we got to kind of call it what it is, that if you're not happy doing something, and he felt trapped in football and the only way that he could be happy is to leave football, I think that that we should, as a society or as a community, kind of, give him the avenues to do what he needs to do in order to be happy. And, maybe in a year or two, when he's had some time off and lets his body rest, lets his mind rest, maybe he'll be ready to come back to the NFL. You never know what really can happen in the future, but I think for the time being, Andrew Luck is just another one of those few athletes that have, gone against the expectations of others, done what's truly made them happy. And I'm really hoping that, Andrew Luck kind of paves the way for other athletes to follow what he does. I'm not saying that I don't want people to be playing football. I want to do other things, but I want people to play football if they actually want to play football. I don't want people to play football because they think that it's something they have to do, or they feel trapped in it, or they feel like they have to do it in order to make others happy. I think everybody should do whatever they want that makes them feel good inside and happy inside. So thanks, guys, for listening to another episode of Inside the Mind, a podcast for athletes. If you enjoyed any part of this podcast, please share it with your friends on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you want to check out past episodes of the podcast or articles related to topics that we talk about, you can check these out on www.behaveit.ca.